Good evening.
Oh, good evening. You're here.
Yeah, that was much better.
Oh, yeah. All I heard was...
Yeah, I had the same thing on my side, and that's when I immediately thought it was the same issue as, what was it, 2 or 3 episodes ago?
You know, it was in the past.
Yeah. In this case, I at least thought it was probably related to playing around with Xcode so much over the past couple of weeks.
Totally. How are you doing this evening?
I haven't decided yet. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I'm pretending like it's just a regular old evening.
Yeah, I would probably be able to do so easier if I didn't have CNN up on mute.
See, I just put some Safari windows up that are live tracking the presidential election and the one of the Senate seat in Alabama.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's going to go the way I don't want it to.
Oh, I would be shocked if it didn't go the way I would be shocked.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, this state is dumb, so I expect everything out of the state to go the wrong way, but I'm still trying to hold out hope.
I was really sad to see they've called Kentucky for Mitch McConnell.
I mean, Kentucky is about as bad as here, so it's not overly surprising.
So actually, I think no, it's about as bad. So
yeah, I was sending some messages back and forth with a couple of people, and the general consensus is it's difficult not to panic at the moment, even though it's way too early to be considering anything done.
Oh, not just that, but just even considering that, there's all these absentee ballots, like record absentee ballots. So, or early ballots, early voting.
Yeah, it's just difficult, when you're watching the coverage and they're not doing a really good job of being able to give you an idea of where that factors in and how it factors in and, which states report which ballots quicker and everything else. It is what it is, but it would be nice if they would have that information a little clearer in presentation.
Yeah, I stopped watching for that reason.
It is interesting that you pick a network and each map looks different.
Yeah. So, how was voting? How was the voting process for you this cycle?
Well, we did absentee ballots, and so we got the ballots back in early October and sent them back in, and tracked that they were at least accepted, which we didn't realize Alabama had that set up, and so it was nice to be able to check it over the past couple of days and make sure that the ballot was received and accepted and theoretically will be counted.
Cool. I actually voted in person today.
Yeah, I saw your pictures.
Oh yeah. I did put those pictures up. It was I drove by my polling place this morning. The first hour they were open, and I guess they'd been open like 15 minutes, and it was packed. There was probably 100 people standing outside, and it looked bigger because everybody, people were distancing themselves for pandemic reasons. And so I was like, ooh, no, that's not good. And then in the afternoon, when my kids were out of school, when they got done with school, I said to them, I was like, you want to see me vote? And they were like, nope. And I was like, come on, let's just drive by. And they're like, okay. So around 3:30 or so, I drove by and I walked right in. I stood behind one person, got checked in, voted, explained what I was doing. I mean, it was crazy. It was like I was able to move on him like a bitch. I just started voting. I didn't even wait. I just voted. They let you do that when you're registered.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I did watch reports of people in the neighborhood going to the polling place and kind of see, just what it was like, because they relocated ours this year. Normally it's at the church that's located across from our neighborhood, but that church runs a fairly limited daycare and like parent day out type of program. And so they elected not to be the polling place this year for obvious reasons. You know, you don't want to mingle that much of the general public with all the different precautions for the pandemic. And so they moved it up the road to a different church, which is probably about 2 miles away. So still pretty close. But people were saying that this morning it was an average wait of an hour and a half to vote. And then over the course of the day, it got better. Some people were reporting as quick as 30 minutes, but that's still pretty significant turnout.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. I'm actually really, you know, obviously the most the most thing that I'm anxious to hear about is the who's going to win the presidential election. There's just been so many variables that it's been hard to like feel one, you know, like one way or another about it. And thinking back about 4 years ago when we voted when it was Clinton and Trump, I can remember feeling quite confident that Clinton was going to win, just because Trump was so fucking crazy, and he is still so fucking crazy. He's probably worse. Anyway, I just can remember how that night went, because I went to a watch party. Like there's like maybe like 30 people at this at kind of a house party. There were 30 people at this watch party, and it's just maybe even more, because there was like an upstairs and a downstairs, and I just remember as the night went on, you know, the happiness went to sort of dismay and shock. And I feel like people are conditioned to see a stat like Trump had a 1 in 4 chance of winning and think, oh, that's failing because of school. We think about percentages like test grades, whereas 1 in 4 is pretty high odds to win something like this. But I think in our head we're conditioned to think, oh no, that's barely going to happen.
Yeah, we don't do overly well with percentages. I know I sent you a link to a post on Daring Fireball from earlier talking about percentages, and it linked to a good write-up. I may add it to the notes, but the key takeaway there was the projection was, 30% chance? And the comparison was that 30% happens all the time.
Yes.
You know, especially if you look at the percentage of success in like sports, and, you know, 30% is actually really good. And so it all depends on the context, and we just don't do a good job of understanding what those percentages mean in various contexts.
Yeah, it's kind of, I was talking to my friend about it, and it's kind of like how we don't really understand like what a mile is. Like if you say, how long is a foot? It's like 12 inches. You can kind of like, it's about the length. It's actually about the length of my foot, or, you know, you can, you know, eyeball a foot. But if you ask somebody how long is a mile, everybody thinks they know how, you know, in America, they think they know what a mile is. But when you start asking people, well, how far do you live from here? They almost always respond with time. And when I respond with actual miles, people are like, well, how long does that take? And so it's just like we are comfortable with like that length of that distant measure of distance, because we can relate to it in other terms. But I don't feel like we really know what a mile is. I know what it feels like to run a mile. I know what it feels like to drive a mile, but I don't actually know how far it is, like from here to there, like to eyeball it or something.
And I think a large part of that also has to do with the fact that there really just aren't straight roads throughout most of the U.S. other than, you know, like Texas or the Midwest potentially. And so our interpretation of a mile isn't based on the actual distance you travel, because it's, you know, a place may be 5 miles away, but it takes you 20 minutes to get there.
Yeah. Well, I think a mile is just like an abstraction of time.
Makes you wonder if we adopted the metric system, if it would be any better.
No, I don't think it would be better. I just think it would be easier for us to convert things like the rest of the world. I think it'd just be so much easier to like do stuff. We need to adopt the metric system, and we need to start changing our recipes to weights and not volumes.
You know, they've tried that a couple of times. It hasn't gone very well.
The metric system or weights versus volumes?
No, converting us to the metric system.
Yeah, I recall that was a thing like right before I was born in the late 70s, and Americans just balked at it, and I was like...
Well, they tried it again. I was in high school, and it was talked about as this is upcoming, and everybody's going to have to figure out the conversions, and et cetera, et cetera.
For state of Georgia?
What? Yeah, that's where it was, but I thought it was more of a, everyone was saying this was coming, and then, of course, it never materialized.
I don't know. I can't think of a time in high school or middle school where that was a thing, or I remember hearing that being a thing. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it is Georgia. It could have easily been 20 years behind everybody else.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, like, it could have been a Georgia thing, and it was never a thing that we heard about in Alabama.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So tell me about your Synology storage capacity.
Yeah, it was the only piece of follow-up that I decided to actually act on because it was easy. But I have 15.7 terabytes of storage in my current setup on the 8-bay array, and of which I have a little over 50% used. I've got 8.9 terabytes used.
And how many? You've got all 8 drives, all 8 bays with drives in them?
Yeah, it's 6 4-terabyte drives and 2 3-terabyte drives.
Gotcha.
And so that equates to 2-disk redundancy.
Mm-hmm. I don't believe I had any follow-up from last week. I know I do have a follow-up episode that I've been working on.
Well, I know nothing made it into the notes for follow-up other than that. So
I was just going to say I did learn how to indent in notes for iOS. It's actually possible.
Yeah. I cleaned up some of that at one point.
I figured, when I found it, I was like, I bet Jesse already knows about this. So,
in fairness, it did take me a bit to figure out. I kept having to go back to the Mac and fixing it just because it was frustrating. And then once I realized it was pretty straightforward, it actually wasn't so bad.
It's not bad at all. It's just not. It wasn't just so easily discovered.
Yeah, it's just not intuitive. You have to. I guess for anybody that might be looking for it, you have to choose to show the like editing bar and then go into the text/formatting options to do so.
Yeah.
So I added a note. I wouldn't normally call out specific passing away of anybody specifically, but to me, Sean Connery was a huge one to lose, even though, he was 90, so we kind of knew it was coming eventually. We just kind of hoped it was like Betty White. Oh,
yeah. She's still safe, right?
As far as I know, I haven't heard anything otherwise.
What was his cause of death? I saw that he passed away, but I never saw from what.
I know that there was something that he had been battling for a bit. I don't recall specifically what it was. But the main reason I mentioned it is because it spurred I decided to go back and watch some highlights of different films that I enjoyed him in, just for my way of paying homage. And so it started with Entrapment, and I watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
I think that's the first movie I saw him in.
And of course I had to go back and watch Highlander 2, even though it's a horrible movie. But I did enjoy his character in it.
Is that the one where he has a long ponytail?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, he's fun to watch anyway, but that was just a role that I remembered him doing really well and seeming to not be the type of role that he would normally take, and so I enjoyed it for that. I will end up still watching The Hunt for Red October, and then I'll move into the Bond films, and then that'll round out my watching Connery films for, I don't know, a few weeks anyway.
So, The Hunt for the Red October was excellent. The Rock was pretty good. I feel like The Rock could have been better if it was not a movie from the 90s. I think just the general vibe of a 90s movie sort of like prevented it from being all that it could be. Where The Hunt for the Red October didn't suffer from that kind of, or from being, developed and recorded, produced in the 90s. So I saw all the Connery film, all the Bond films that Connery was in, including the one that is not an official Bond film.
Yeah, Thunderball.
No, Thunderball is an official Bond film. It was one after that, the one with Kim Basinger. I can't Never Say Die Again, maybe. I can't remember which one it is, but it's got one of those kind of names. And I feel like I haven't seen Highlander, but I've seen enough images from Highlander to be like, I feel like he was like, I gotta pay the yacht bill this year, so I'm gonna do these movies.
Never Say Never Again.
Never Say Never Again. Yeah.
I had to think about it. Thunderball was the one that came to mind, but no, you're right. That one was an official Bond film. It was Never Say Never Again that was not done by Eon Productions.
Yeah. Because he did 4 in a row. He did Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, which everybody, Goldfinger seems to be a really well-received movie. I didn't feel like it was any better or worse than Dr. No or From Russia with Love. And Thunderball was the 4th one. Ever since Casino Royale, I feel like I can't go back and watch the old Bond movies.
I struggle with it a little bit here and there. To me, Daniel Craig has definitely embraced the role and plays it so well in such a way that he's up there. But I was introduced to Bond with Connery, and so it's real tough to separate that kind of nostalgic feeling for Bond from watching Connery on screen. And I enjoyed both Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan's portrayal of the character, even though I didn't enjoy the movies as much. So it's, at this point, I kind of put Connery and Craig level on my preferred Bonds, and then follow that up with Moore and Brosnan, and then Dalton being my least preferred of the primary ones. Technically, I at least acknowledge Lazenby's performance on Her Majesty's Secret Service, but it was not one of my preferred films anyway.
I haven't seen that one. I feel like it's, I gotta say, like with Casino Royale, I feel like it's more than just Daniel Craig's performance, because I feel like Daniel Craig could have been or carried over with the same Bond persona. He's, with Casino Royale, and it's a very different Bond persona that he had, and it's a lot more edgy and gritty. And I remember at the time, thinking Clive Owen was going to be the next Bond, and he would have been a good Bond the way Bond had been done, but they went in a very different direction, and they got the right actor, they got the right director, they got the right writers. I mean, I think it was, Craig's performance is a personification of all of that work.
I certainly agree. I'm not trying to take away from the collaborative effort at all. It's just that, what we see and what we identify with is the actor's portrayal. And one of the things that I liked most about the Craig films is that they felt far more realistic and less gadget focused, I guess, for lack of better wording.
I feel like they were less campy, because like I remember enjoying GoldenEye, and then Tomorrow Never Dies is sort of unmemorable to me, and then the one after that was the one with Christmas, and I can't remember the name of that, but it was the third Pierce Brosnan Bond movie, and I really didn't like how many puns there were in that movie. Like, I'm all for a good pun. Like, I got no problems with a good pun. Like, I enjoy a good pun. I make puns. And I one of the things I loved about Sean Connery's Bond was he would make some pretty funny pun jokes. And in that third, and it's still not coming to me what the name of it is, but that third Pierce Brosnan Bond movie, The World Is Not Enough. Bond was making puns. The bad guy was making puns. The bad guy's henchman was making puns. I don't recall, but it wouldn't surprise me if, one of the Bond girls was making a pun. It was just, I felt like it was just too much, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. And I didn't even see the one with Halle Berry that came after that. Diamonds Are Forever, I think is that one. And
Die Another Day.
Die Another Day?
Yeah, Diamonds Are Forever was one of the earlier films. That was Connery.
Not really? Connery was in Diamonds Are Forever?
Yep, it was released in 1971.
Huh. Anyway.
It was actually his last Bond film.
His last official Bond film.
Well, yeah.
So, that just was off-putting as the Bond with the later Bond movies in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And then when Daniel Craig came on, do you want it shaken or stirred? I don't give a damn. I mean, that was so great. And the first chase scene in that movie, it's on foot. It was, he was chasing a guy, and the guy he was chasing was doing some parkour moves, and that was so unexpected. It was so cool. And then they did have a proper car chase, and that was pretty fun. And when he pulls, the valet pulls up with his, I can't remember if it was a Ford Focus or a Ford Fiesta, but it was a little Ford hatchback, and that was really funny. I thought that was, there's so many good, not just good jokes, but obvious piss takes at the previous 20 movies. And I thought that was, I really enjoyed that. I think even to the extent that when he's getting beaten by the baddie somewhere towards the end of the movie, just the thing that was funny, the thing was funny, he was talking about how everybody's going to know that you scratched my balls. And I mean, it was the right, I feel like everything about that movie went in the right direction, except for maybe some of the blatant sexism.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting if you look at the catalog of Craig films that Quantum of Solace is an outlier. All of the rest of them feel like they do flow very well together, but the second one feels like it was more trying to discover what path to take. Yeah.
It's not bad. It definitely feels different from the rest. Did you ever see the movie Layer Cake?
Yes, I have it.
Okay. Because I remember when I watched that movie, it was it was back when something that it was rented, when you could rent movies from your cable provider, so mid 2000s. I remember hearing it was after the movie came out, but before Casino Royale came out, and it was here's the new Bond, and it was kind of based on his performance in this movie, and I really like that movie.
Yeah, I think that was actually my first introduction to Craig as an actor. It might have been something else, but I'm pretty sure Layer Cake was what I knew him from.
So Layer Cake was the first time I noticed Daniel Craig, but I have since realized that was not the first movie I've seen him in. I saw him in The Golden Compass, that movie with, no, not The Golden Compass. The other movie, it's the movie with, it's Tomb Raider, the first Tomb Raider movie. He's in that movie. But I just didn't notice him. And blast from the past, he's in A Kid in King Arthur's Court. It's a 90s Disney movie.
I actually haven't seen that.
I watched that recently because it's on Disney Plus, and I'm just holy shit, that's Daniel Craig. He has a terrible 90s bowl cut in that movie. And Kate Winslet is in that movie. It's there's these two major Hollywood actors, British Hollywood actors, that are doing this kids movie. And I guess I don't think it was, that movie may have come out the same year Kate Winslet was in, I think it was Emma, something no, not Emma. Much Ado About Nothing. It was one of those, maybe Pride and Prejudice is what it was. I think it might have been Pride and Prejudice. I'm pretending like I'm not making feedback follow up for myself. Anyway, it was like right before her, like that was right at the beginning of her career, or at least American career.
Circling back, you mentioned Clive Owen. I remember hearing the same rumors that he was going to be playing Bond, and I actually would have endorsed him over Craig originally.
Same.
Just because I knew Owen from a number of different things, but most notably the BMW short film.
Yep.
And the combination of him, and it was Guy Ritchie that directed that one. And it was just great. It was the only one that really sticks in mind that was memorable.
The one with Madonna?
Yep.
Yeah, that was real. So, yeah, it was really good. I think it's got to be everybody's favorite. I remember I have very fond memories of those BMW films because you downloaded this application from BMW's website, and then within the application it would download the movies.
Well, I actually got the DVD from them.
I eventually got the DVD, but before there was the DVD, it was a digital download.
Yeah, that's how I first watched them. But that's how I also found out that you could get the DVD or request the DVD. And I think you had to pay shipping, maybe.
Yeah.
But if you were an owner, you could actually get it without having to pay shipping, I think.
Oh, cool.
I, of course, did not own a BMW at the time, but that's kind of how I found out about the DVD being available, because the little retail store that I worked at the time, my boss's husband had a BMW. He had just recently bought one, and so he was the one who initially turned me on to the short films.
I was working at a company that had a lot of like artsy folks working for it, and a lot of like film buffs, and that's how I found out about it. And it was at the time that I started watching him, the DVD was not available, and sometime after that, I saw that it was available, and so I ordered it. Paid, I think it was like $5.95 to have it. Shipping and handling was $5.95, so it was a nominal fee. And I remember that it came with two extra short films that were not in the original 5. And I don't know if you saw the one with Gary Oldman.
Oh yeah, I watched all of them. I actually need to go back and rip that disc before it's not playable.
I have rips of it. I don't. The rips are probably a few years old, but the rips are definitely at least 5 years old. So, anyway, I have fond memories of the BMW movies, and when I heard that Clive Owen was going to be James Bond, I was like, duh. And if they had kept James Bond in the same, hadn't drastically reconceptualized the whole Bond character and story, Clive Owen would have been perfect. I think Clive Owen could have done what Daniel Craig did, but obviously Daniel Craig did an excellent job of reimagining James Bond.
Did you ever see Shoot 'Em Up?
I did not.
Okay, so Clive Owen is in that one, and he plays a character that I think is more easily compared to Craig's Bond. They're very, very different. I don't want to make it sound like it's an easy comparison, but it's an easy way to see how he could have probably pulled off the same thing. But I think it would have been less memorable because from a visual perspective, he blends in with the other Bonds.
Yes.
And I think taking the approach of making Bond be very visually contrasting to those that came before him, breaking that mold, so to speak, is part of why Craig fulfilling that role really brings it into its own as well.
Yes, I agree with that totally. I remember, I think this is the last thing I have to say about Clive Owen and Bond movies in general, but I remember that the movie that came out right after Casino Royale that Clive Owen was in, I think it was the Pink Panther movie with Steve Martin, and I remember there being a joke about him it wasn't like a direct joke about him not being Bond, but it was obviously a joke about him not getting Bond, and he was like, "Yeah, I thought I was going to get it too," and I just thought that was noteworthy.
I'm not so sure I've watched that either.
It's okay. Yeah, I think if you're looking for a movie and you want something silly and funny and you don't have to pay for it, like it's on one of the streaming services that you already subscribe to, it's worth a go. There are better Steve Martin movies though. Not that Steve Martin's bad. There's just better Steve Martin movies.
I think probably one of my favorite movies of his has to still be Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
But I mean, we could spend a couple of hours talking about entertainment and going down that rabbit hole, though. So
yeah, well, we've already spent a good half hour on mostly Bond movies. I didn't know we were going to have a James Bond episode.
I didn't either. It is certainly worth it, but I don't really think I have anything else to add to that discussion at the moment, though.
No, and actually, I don't think we've ever talked about Bond movies before.
No, we haven't.
I can't think of a time. Yeah, so
maybe we'll do an actual Bond episode. That would be fun.
Yeah. We have to watch all 24 movies first.
No, we have to wait for No Time to Die.
Yeah. Oh, man. That was supposed to be this month. If there had not been a pandemic, we would have gotten the 25th Bond movie.
Yeah, I was sad that they decided to push it to a theatrical release anyway, and I think that's still going to end up not happening, but we'll see.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay that they're doing it. I mean, I get why. It's one of their bigger movies. They want the money that way, so I get it.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying that I think by the time we get there, theaters are going to be no more.
Theaters are going to crop back up. I mean, maybe the current theater companies, but they're going to come back. I mean, the infrastructure's there. Somebody's going to make money. Somebody's going to invest and make the money. It's got to die and become... somebody's going to have to be able to swoop in and get a good deal on it. I think it was an episode of the talk show with Gruber talking about it was an episode of the talk show about there were some laws put in place where movie studios couldn't own theaters. They couldn't own and operate theaters. And so this was based on a thing where Disney made plans to build like a big center in Philadelphia, and it was going to have like laser tag and stores and kind of like a small Disney mall. And the thing that was obviously missing from it was a movie theater. There are no movie theaters there in this like center. So it's interesting that maybe because of the pandemic, there might be some pushing from Hollywood studios to get that law reversed.
I mean, I could certainly see it. I don't know if it's one of those things I would have to wait and see what it turns out to be like in practice to know if I actually would feel okay with it or not, because I'm sure the idea behind it was the same thing that you get into with being able to fix pricing and wholly control distribution in a way that is anti-consumer.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think that was the first monopoly buster, or one of the first monopoly busters, was this exact thing, for those exact reasons. The on the block when I lived in Brooklyn, on the block that I lived on on the corner was a movie theater, and I don't know how many screens it had, maybe like somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen screens. And it still had the United Artists logo on it. It was a theater that was originally owned by United Artists. And I remember seeing that and thinking, oh, that's weird, because they play all sorts of movies there, not just, UA movies. And it was because I didn't know. And it had become a historical part of the theater. Like the inside had been renovated as much as you would renovate a theater, as often as you renovate theaters, but the outside still had the United Artists logo. That was pretty cool.
Those are the kinds of little things that just make the particular venue that much more interesting.
Yes. There have been a few times where I have gone to a particular venue that was more iconic, more interesting, having some historical significance, and knew that I was going to get a lesser quality movie experience, but wanted to see it in that iconic place.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to follow up to that with.
So we should talk about your project, and I don't know how I want to ask. So I feel like there are two topics here that are like directly linked to one another, and that is your project and Nova. And I feel like we could talk about them both at the same time, but I definitely have some questions about both. And we talked about some of the things that happened with your project a little bit earlier this week. So it was yesterday, and I was like, "Don't give away too much. We want to talk about this tomorrow night." So
yeah, I mean, but we can always rehash a conversation for the sake of recording if it came down to it.
That's true. So, do you think these two topics are linked?
Yeah, they definitely are. Like the whole reason Nova even became something that I decided to grab was because of some of the things I was trying to figure out with this project. So it just has also been useful for a couple of other reasons since then.
So I think, I think that's. I kind of want to start with the Nova stuff and sort of like go into like why you decided to use that for your project.
It started off pretty straightforward. I'm a bit of a sucker for good Mac apps, and Panic is one of the companies that over time I have historically bought every app they've released. So it's not that far of a stretch that I would have bought Nova regardless, even if I never used it, just because I like Panic. But what made me decide to go ahead and snag it was one of the things that I'm doing exploring this app is parsing and reading from a local JSON file and displaying some information related to that. And I kept having problems trying to figure out within Xcode if it was valid JSON or not. And I could have gone about it a number of ways. There are some free apps out there that would also do syntax highlighting for JSON and everything else, but I decided to go ahead and use it as justification to buy Nova for the heck of it. And so it became useful just to have that syntax highlighting for looking at a JSON file. And I've since also used it as an HTML editor for show notes, actually, because I failed to check the feed last week and realized I had some formatting errors, and so I fixed all that earlier today.
Oh, wow, okay.
And so last week and the episode that was released yesterday both had the outline all in one long line instead of actually, broken out. And it's because once you inject a URL, you have to do all of it in HTML, and I didn't pay attention to that. So it's a real easy fix, but anytime you're working with that type of file, it's a lot easier just to drop it in something that's aware and have that syntax highlighting so that you don't, flub it up a few times.
Very cool. So have those been the only two use cases that you've used Nova at this point?
Yeah, and so far it's been fairly limited. It's the same kind of use cases that I would have used Coda for previously, which I technically, I guess, still have a license to and could have used it instead. But again, I used it as justification to go ahead and purchase Nova and explore its capabilities a little bit further as I go.
So I actually, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, or right after we talked about Nova the first time, I downloaded it the next day and started messing around with it myself. And I didn't have any use case for it. I love the idea of using a Mac editor. And I'm a big fan of Vim, and I love Vim key bindings. And that's really a strong part of my workflow. But I wanted to have something different to look at the XML files that I look at for work. And it's almost there. It has Nova has integration for Git, but it doesn't have integration for SVN, so I can't quite use it the way I was hoping that I could. And I was reading that Coda has integration with SVN, and I thought about trying that out. But
the other reason I went ahead and decided to grab Nova is I did set up a Git repository for the Ansible work that I have played with as a different project. And when I saw that it had the native Git functionality, it's like, all right, well, worst case scenario, I know it understands YAML, and so it makes it real easy to be able to also view my Ansible work there instead of having to default to Vim.
Yeah. I wanted something that I could use instead of Vim from time to time, because having a different view can be helpful. And depending on what you're doing, it's like I can come up with a number of use cases where I'd like to have be able to look at the same thing in a similar way, but just different enough for certain reasons that I was hoping this would work out for me. I would expect at some point that SVN integration will be added, since Coda had SVN integration. But if you're ready to get the product out and you have to choose between the two, of course you're going to choose Git, because Git seems to be a version control that's a lot more widely used.
Yeah, I have no doubt it's coming. One of the other reasons that I had no problems when I started looking closer at what Nova had to offer, the fact that it's extensible with both first-party and third-party modules. It's like, all right, it's kind of a no-brainer at that point. Like, any use case that I might have is going to eventually be available. And if it's not, I could technically write my own use case for it and make it work if I understood a little more about, that side of it.
Yeah. So how does it compare to Coda?
For the most part, when I was doing stuff with Coda, I was pretty much steeped only in maintaining my own website outside of a provider. So I was doing all the raw HTML and CSS coding myself, and that's all I really used it for. So from that standpoint, Nova's 100% on par. I mean, it certainly has all the same features and then some. I like the interface better for certain types of work with Nova, because I'm so accustomed to using just command line tools, Vim specifically. But one thing that I did like about Coda that I have not looked to see if Nova also does is that Coda would let you do or flip back and forth between the code and click a tab and see the preview. And I haven't looked to see if that's a function of Nova or not.
I'm fairly confident it is. When I was looking for SVN integration for Nova on their features page, I'm fairly confident I saw that there's a preview for Nova has a preview feature.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it's not there. I just haven't had the need to look for it yet. So,
yeah. So what does Nova give? What does Nova bring to the game? What does Nova bring to your workflow that Xcode can't do for you?
Well, Xcode just isn't designed as a multi-format editor. While it displays whatever type of file you decide to pull up in it, there's no contextual highlighting or syntactical coloring or anything like that for the raw data. And so when I was trying to figure out, okay, is this legitimate or not, it was a lot easier to open up the file in something else and see whether there was a mismatch somewhere or something that was not colorized in a way that it needed to be. And it ended up that the issue I had wasn't related to that anyway. It was something else kind of dumb, but it helped to be able to kind of compare those and say, okay, this is accurate at least. I don't have to worry about the actual structure of the file. So now I need to just figure out what the decoding process is not happy about. And that's when I learned that it was, if you have a key defined and the key is present, but a value is not present for the key, it's going to crash and fuck. And I was trying to handle the lack of values in a way that is not the way it works programmatically. So basically, if the key is present, I have to have a value for it, even if that value is nil.
Gotcha.
But I did at least figure that out finally. So
yeah, once you found it, it's like, okay, I understand how you're working. Okay, we can move from here.
Yeah, and that also that kind of prompts into, I mentioned that I've now rewritten everything that I had a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
So the current iteration is better. I'm not going to say that it didn't need to be rewritten. But what I did is I reached out to a developer friend and said, okay, before I go too far down this rabbit hole of trying to figure something out, if you were doing something where you had a local data store and it was JSON formatted and you wanted to track these things related to each other, would you try to key 3 separate data sources to each other, or would you just do one single data source with everything nested for the individual items? And his response was that he would probably go the nested route just because it's more than capable of handling it. I don't know for sure if I agree, depending on how big that file grows, but that's a whole different, consideration and topic. But I decided it would be a good exercise to understand how to work with both types. My original layout had the 3 individual data sources. The current layout has the 1 file with nested values. And what I've rewritten basically gives me a third of the functionality I originally had. And what I mean by that is my original, I could read from the 3 different sources. I didn't have a way to identify any relationship between them, so I was just reading the sources. So technically, a third of it isn't necessarily accurate. I probably have the same functionality. But all I've figured out so far is how to read the top level of the data and present it. I haven't gotten to the point, 1, I haven't had the time to really explore it, but 2, I haven't figured out how to read in the nested values in relation to that root level value. So that's my next hurdle. Once I figure that out, the rest of it's relatively easy, I think. All that to say, though, that I've still got like months of work ahead of me to actually have it do anything beyond just present static data to a user in different ways. Never mind the fact that it's supposed to be editable data, so I still have to figure out the reverse side of this anyway.
So how long do you have like an idea of like you want to get this out, or at least in a place where you could, or let me back up and say, when you get to a place where it's usable, are you gonna use test? You think you'll use test flight?
Oh, absolutely. Mostly just because then it's easier if I decide that I want to invite somebody random to take a look at it, but predominantly because I just want to understand that process. Like, it's easy to do the side loading thing with the, straight from Xcode. I know that because I've already loaded both versions on my device just to see what it looks like. And side note, it looks so much better on a device than it does in the simulator. But like I know that process. I understand it. I don't know the test flight process, and so I think I know it just from a high level perspective, but I want to go through it regardless just to understand it, because I don't know that this will ever see public use. It might, just depending on how I feel about it when I get to a working kind of prototype standpoint. But I know that after all of this is said and done, I do have a couple of things that have now kind of formed in mind that I think would be beneficial for actual like public production kind of deployment models.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to want to know that anyway when I get to that point. So I might as well do it with this one too.
Awesome. So this may not see the broad expanse that is the iOS App Store, but it will see the light of day for some users.
Yeah, the only reason it wouldn't see even like the the more broad, like public use would be if I just don't finish it. Because this particular project, I think, is relatively ambitious. I don't expect to be able to complete a functional, non-problematic implementation within a year. Like I just, based on what free time I have and other things going on, I just don't see being able to get that far. But, give it a couple of months, and if I make significantly better progress than I'm currently forecasting, sure, maybe it'll be a full-fledged app. It may have some rough edges, but I'd go ahead and distribute that anyway, just to, even if I put it up for free, just to go through the process.
Yeah. But it will definitely pave the way for some future apps.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. You would think that I would start with the ones that I already identify as less problematic, that I think might be more useful. But that's just not the way I tend to approach things. I tend to approach things with, I have this complex problem that I want to solve, and I want to understand it, because it teaches me things that, while they may not be applicable to the other projects, it helps me understand how to debug or work with some of the trickier aspects of other projects a lot easier. So I'd rather finish out the more difficult, more ambitious one, even if it's problematic, and then say, okay, well, I only really need to know how to do these things and know how to do these things well. That's fine. I don't know. It's funny, but it's the way that I tend to approach new things. I kind of did the same thing when I was learning Ansible. I took a very ambitious project for trying to make things work in a way that there just wasn't a solution for. And the reality is that everything I've done with it from a practical perspective has been ridiculously easy in comparison.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess the way you speak about it, it comes across more as like, oh, that's easy, instead of like, I had to do all that work.
Yeah, I think in general, I would just rather make it seem insurmountable and achieve that up front, because it breaks that mental barrier of, well, yeah, anything else is not going to be insurmountable. It's just I've got to figure out where it fits.
Yeah.
Which actually, now that I say it out loud, sounds a lot like my approach to most things, where it's just, let's break down that mental barrier, and then once it's gone, all the rest of it is just a walk in the park in comparison.
Yeah.
That said, I expect it to take another week or so before I get back to the same level of functionality I had with the previous iteration, because even though I've done some things that I do think are much better in my approach to displaying information and will make it much better overall, I haven't figured out how to grab those nested values as they relate to the specific root instance or root key. And that's I haven't found anything that points me in the right direction yet. So I have a feeling it's going to be a lot of trial and error.
But the next go around, probably less trial and error.
Well, yeah, once I figure that out, so in that nested value, so the raw data structure only has two layers. It has the root values that define an object, and it has a range of values that define secondary objects in relation to that primary object. That secondary object does have a couple of different categorizations. So I'm wanting to not only display those secondary objects, but I want to display them based on the category that I assign them to. Once I figure that out, the difficulty is just in figuring out the logic of how to handle values that don't exist between one or the other, instead of doing it with me defining nil values. And like, I know there's got to be a cleaner way to do it, but I'm not to the point of cleaning it up. I'm still at the point of figuring out how to appropriately access that data and filter that data. I feel like that makes sense. It probably doesn't.
I mean, yes and no. It's still like what you're saying. It all works, but it's still somewhat abstract.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense when you can see something. Or if I were to actually describe it in a way where you understood what data type I was actually working with, I think it would make a lot of sense. But, until I decide whether this is going to be an actual, production, public-facing kind of thing, I don't want to necessarily give a head start to the random person or two that might come across the podcast and have an interest.
Yeah. I figured as much.
Did you have any other questions about that project?
I do not.
Well, that works, because I have a couple of questions for you.
Oh.
So, first, I know Apple One launched.
Yeah.
And I know you were on the fence in a way because we have a different level of consumption of services from Apple at this point anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I went ahead and subscribed because as of the day that it launched, it was the same price that I was paying Apple for services anyway, and I was gaining news. So to me, it was just a no-brainer of, well, yeah, if I'm paying you this amount anyway, I might as well just go ahead and keep doing it and just bundle it. I did not notice, or I did not realize that it actually changed the amount of storage that I had. It increased. It actually went from 2 terabytes to 4 terabytes for iCloud storage.
Oh.
So technically, I gained news and storage capacity.
Did you not also, you got, it comes with the Arcade, right?
I was already subscribed to Arcade.
Okay. And Apple TV Plus?
Yeah, and I already had TV Plus.
But TV Plus was you're still in the free year of TV Plus, right?
Right, but I was already paying for iCloud storage being increased because Emily and I both have a relatively significant footprint as far as data usage goes. So it actually might be $5 more than I was paying, but it was in the realm of, I know I'm going to do this anyway. I might as well just go ahead and do it now.
Yeah. I will likely get it. I'm not ready to get it yet because what I'm paying monthly will go up. But I think that things that come with it are worth it, and so, which is the whole point of the service anyway. But I see on my phone, like, I can get 3 months of Apple Arcade free. I thought I'd try that out, try the free one out, and I'm thinking maybe by the end of the year I will might switch over to Apple One. But it's definitely on my mind to switch over to it or subscribe to it. So.
Yeah, it was just going through in my head. So we were paying $15 for the family plan for Apple Music, $10 for the iCloud, the upgraded iCloud storage, and $5 for Arcade. So that alone takes you to the $30 that Apple One provides. And so we added news that we did not have previously. Technically, that's all we're getting at the moment, but when Fitness Plus rolls out, we'll get it too. And we got the increase in storage, so I do feel like it's at least, we're paying the same. We got a little bit more. Great. No big deal.
So I know that I'm pretty soon going to need to do something about storage because I'm at 95% capacity. Like, looking at my phone right now, I'm at 189.4 out of 200 gigabytes. So, but I did not realize that Apple One was now available until I saw the note and in the show notes, and I'm not even seeing where you go sign up for it.
Yeah, it took a little bit to find it. You have to go into your the account link on the phone, or at least that's how I got to it. So if you go into settings and then choose your name where it has the Apple ID and everything, and then go to subscriptions.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's interesting because I got my iPhone 12. It came last Wednesday, so the day after our last recording. And I opened up my phone, and I didn't get my phone with AppleCare. And I opened up my phone. I was looking at settings for some reason. It says, "Hey, it showed me that I was eligible to get Apple Arcade for 3 months for free." And it showed that I could get AppleCare and pay monthly. And I'm like, that's cool. So I open it up, and I look, and it's like, it was the easiest AppleCare purchase process I've ever done. It's just like, pay monthly. It's and do it right there in the settings of the phone. And I got a bunch of confirmation emails, and it was like kind of a no-brainer. Because I've taken a different approach with how I want to do that, how I'm using this phone. But yeah, it was a piece of cake to add Apple Care Plus right from the phone, and I'm just kind of surprised that they don't have a thing for Apple One right there with the arcade subscription. So, but just looking at the price,
I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah. Just looking at the pricing, I think it will be like a pretty easy justification or rationalization to add Apple One. Just it'll give for the same amount of money, I'll have more stuff. So who doesn't want more stuff for the same money? So it's not that expensive. So
and honestly, the big thing for me that I like is that now the different services that I was getting from Apple are aligned on just a single purchase and, subscription schedule, and not sprinkled out throughout the month.
Yeah. Yeah. I experience that as well, because like Apple Music comes in this day of the month, and then my storage is on another day, and so forth. And and I ended up actually seeing an email. I'll have to back up and you'll see how I got here. But I wanted to on my MacBook Pro, I had Big Sur on it, wiped it out, and put Catalina back on it, and I only reinstall apps when I need them. I got to a point where I was like, oh, I want to put Solver back on it. Have you used Solver?
Yeah, I keep it on the phone and the Mac.
Yeah, I have it on my phone. I've had it on my phone for ages, but I just hadn't put it back on my Mac, and I was like, oh, I had a reason to use Solver, and I was just like going and looking for it, and I was like, why isn't it in the Mac App Store? That's really weird. Like, I can't re-download this. And then I go and I'm looking at all the version numbers, and I was like, it's still in the version that I bought is still in the Mac App Store. I should be able to get this. And I'm just like, oh. So I actually go and I start a chat session with someone from Apple support, and I found like the email that had my Solver purchase. And lo and behold, it was an email for some purchase from the iTunes App Store. It wasn't my Solver purchase. And turns out that I got Solver from the source.
Oh, I see where this is going. Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't a Mac App, because towards the end of this, everything at the source moved to Mac App Store downloads, but it was from right before App Store downloads, and I had an actual username and key, and I found the wrong email. I think the email I had was the email I found, the Solver I found was for the iOS app and not the Mac app. So my Mac app didn't come from the Mac App Store. That's why it didn't appear there and shouldn't be there. And I was looking at the email for the iOS app and thinking it should be in the Mac App Store. And before that poor Apple Care agent got too deep into the problem, was like, hey, just stop, figure it out. I'm looking at the wrong store. My bad. And they're like, cool, is there anything else I can help you with? I was like, nope. So I got Solver back on my computer, but I was thinking it needed to be a Mac App Store download. But I feel like if I had fewer emails with things I've purchased from Apple that are on recurring payments, then I might not have messed that one up. Nah, who's kidding? I would have gotten that one wrong. Didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I know. It's just funny because I think back to, like, I'm a hoarder when it comes to emails. And so if I were to go look, I bet when it comes to my applications and licenses folder, I probably have stuff dating back to when it was .Mac.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. I think I have stuff before .Mac. I'm trying to it used to be called iTools before it was .Mac.
Yeah, I probably would have stuff going back that far as well, to be honest. That might be something I'll go take a look at. I might figure out what my oldest email is that I still have in my now iCloud email.
Yeah, it was iTools, then it was .Mac, and then it was Mobile Me, which was like the worst name, and now iCloud.
Yeah, see, I think the big thing for me, though, is when it was iTools, I actually would back up my mailboxes and archive them off, and then each year I would do that.
Yep.
So I probably don't have anything going back that far that's current in my email. But I bet if I were to go to pull some of my old backup disks, I could probably go back to those days.
So I did the same thing and I archived them, but I just left them on the server as well. I just had an archive in case something catastrophic happened on the servers. Nothing ever did. I think the last backup I have is I think I have backups from like 2007 through 2009, 10, something like that. So obviously nothing's happened and I've still got all my email. That kind of reminds me of the backup application. Do you remember the backup application that came with .Mac?
I do.
So I have a good story about that application. I used it and I never had to restore from it for my personal data, but I did end up working with somebody that needed that. And so I definitely know why Apple replaced backup with Time Machine, but I'll paint the picture of this was back in the day when Apple charged money for software. So .Mac used to be $100 a year. You got the email, you got the at Mac email address, you got the like the tiniest amount of storage for a website or photo gallery. You got the backup software. There was backup, which had a purple umbrella, and then I think backup 2 had an orange umbrella. Or I might be reversing those. I don't remember. Anyway, 2007 rolls around, Leopard is released, and everybody who has Leopard has Time Machine. So now at this point, all you have to do is plug in a hard drive, and you can do backups. And Leopard retail price for Leopard was $129. And slowly Apple deprecated and removed backup. I still think I have a copy. I bet it won't run on current Mac OS. Anyway, fast forward to 2010. I'm working at the Apple Store in on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and this woman comes in and she's got an issue. She's got one of those classic white MacBooks, and it has a failing hard drive. And talks to her about data recovery and so forth. And she's like, "Oh, I've got a backup." I was like, "Great." And I check in our computer, replace the hard drive. She comes back to the Genius Bar with her backup drive, and we're going to restore the backup. All of her backups are in the backup application from .Mac, and I'm like, "Oh shit!" And I want to say after about an hour of working with her, she said some really nasty things to me. Really nasty things. She's so frustrated. And I think part of it was we couldn't get some stuff installed. Anyway, we were having an hour's worth of not being able to get her back up, even start restoring. And you get to the point where it's like, we got to stop. And so I made her like 4 Genius Bar reservations in a row for the next day. She came back. I don't know what happened. She got all of her stuff done. I remember like writing like detailed notes as to what needed to happen, and she got all of her data put back on the computer. And it was but I just remember thinking it was one of those things. It was like, when this backup was started, Leopard was out. Why didn't you put her on Leopard and do a Time Machine backup? That would have been so much easier. But she ended up writing me a letter thanking me for setting her up with the next Genius Bar reservation with the notes that I had, and she apologized for cussing me out in the store.
Well, it's always nice when it has a happy ending, at least.
Yeah, she got all her stuff.
And it's one of those reasons that I still have yet to trust any of Apple's backup solutions.
You use a Time Machine, right?
No, I use rsync.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I go old school and just actually block for block copy a copy of the data from the internal laptop to an external, and then I actually replicate the external to my Synology.
By the time I knew about doing backups, I was using Time Machine was out, and I was using Time Machine. And there are a few times that I restored from Time Machine, and I didn't have problems. Like I have done like a migration from Time Machine the way like normal people do it. And then I got to where I was like moving home folders from here to there. And then I got to, it's funny, like I was very, in the beginning, I was very trusting of Time Machine. And then like my latest thoughts are, it's like, yeah, I have the Time Machine backup. I also have a Backblaze backup. And if I know that I'm going to wipe out my drive, I'm going to do a super duper backup. And typically I will, I use Time Machine and Backblaze as safety nets, and I'll do the super duper backup and restore from the super duper backup.
Yeah, and so my backup workflow is that everything from the external or everything from the laptop gets appended to my backup on the external. I don't actually remove any old stuff on the external. And then I use rsync for that process, and I use rsync to copy everything from the local and the external to the Synology. Again, I append to my backup. I do not let it remove old files or anything. And then on top of that, I have Backblaze running on the laptop with both of my externals listed so that, within every 30 days, I have to make sure I get them plugged in and make sure any updates are synchronized. But I have taken Apple completely out of the loop for anything related to backups. And it's not that I don't trust Time Machine. It's that I never actually invested in like Time Capsule or anything. And so I don't want to use an old Airport Extreme router just to plug it into the network so that I can plug in a hard drive and have Time Machine do its thing. And I don't want to have Time Machine take over an external because I would rather just use rsync to do block level replication to the external. So it's mostly because my infrastructure evolved from a systems administration standpoint and not from a using Apple's tools standpoint.
Yeah, I think we're on opposite ends of the spectrum moving towards one another.
Yeah.
I might be moving towards you a little bit faster than you're moving towards me, but definitely moving towards each other.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty accurate representation. Because like at this point, if I could just have Time Machine work with a volume that I set up on the Synology, which I guess may be possible now, I haven't explored it, I would be more willing to use Time Machine as this is my primary recovery method, but I don't know that I would be willing to drop my rsync backups because I have shell scripts that run those and I can just kick it off and walk away.
Yeah, so I think and I've heard that I'll finish one of these sentences that I start. Synology has a couple of backup tools. There's Hyper Backup and Hyper something else. One of them actually uses some of the same technologies that Time Machine is, and so it's kind of like I wouldn't say it's a hack of Time Machine, but it can be integrated with Time Machine. So on the client, you would run Time Machine, and on the Synology, you have the Hyper Backup running and they communicate with one another. And I've heard good things about that. I've never used it. My Synology doesn't have that much. I've never wanted to use storage on my Synology for that much based on how much I have and what I'm using it for. And the fact that I had a time capsule for a long time. I've had 2 time capsules. The faulty part of the time capsule that I've experienced has been the power supply. But I've never had data loss from the time capsule. I've pulled a drive out of a time capsule and I'm using it. I had to, the time capsule died and the power supply died and the drive was in great shape. So I just put it into an enclosure. So that's good. I mean, Apple used really good drives. The ones that I saw were Western Digital Black, when Western Digital Black was important. And so I've got a time capsule and I've just been using that. It's in bridge mode on my connected to hardwired to my Amplify router. So it has been a really good backup tool. It's never given me fuss until recently. Whenever we moved over to Apple file system, Time Machine has had sort of some weird problems. It would back up way too much of the same stuff over and over. And supposedly that's fixed in Big Sur. I never tried it when I had the Big Sur beta. I'm hoping to stay on Catalina a bit longer. I assume we'll hear some stuff about Big Sur next week, and I'm not expecting to hear the news about it that I want. But with the exception of the past of backing up APFS volumes on Time Machine, I feel like Time Machine and Time Capsule have been appropriately reliable for a consumer.
Yeah, I've certainly heard enough about different issues with Time Machine with the initial move to APFS that the information that I've heard as well is that Big Sur addresses a number of concerns. I don't really know how quick I will adopt Big Sur now that we've embarked upon this endeavor and I have to rely on audio tools working appropriately.
Yeah.
But I am kind of excited for next week's event because if my interpretation and understanding of Apple Silicon is appropriate, we're in for some really just kind of eye-popping results that, like, I may very well be buying a new Mac faster than I expected to.
I think this is going to be the most exciting event of the year from Apple.
I agree. Or at the moment, I think I agree. Anyway, I think it depends a lot on which Macs they decided to go with first. I know there have been some rumors and leaks apparently over the course of the day. I have not read them because I decided I don't want to look at any info. I just want to wait for next week.
Well, it's going to be the Mac Pro and it's going to be the Mac Mini that are updated first.
Yeah, that would be the most shocking combination, I think.
Yeah. Oh, and they're bringing back the G4 Cube.
Now, see, if they did that, I would probably buy one. I would have to buy one because I would have to put it next to the one that I have that is in pristine condition. It is still the one thing that I am most proud of finding. I told you the story about how I got it, didn't I?
I think so, but it's worth hearing again.
Yeah, and it's short. Like I worked for a little independent computer repair shop in Columbus, Georgia for a while, and there was a guy that came in with the Power Mac, the G4 Cube, and I think it was G3 for the QuickSilver Mac Pro?
The QuickSilver was also G4.
It was? Okay.
Yeah.
So either way, it was two, there were two Macs, and one was the QuickSilver model Mac Pro and the other was the Cube. And for whatever reason, I mean, the owner didn't have a resale market for Macs. That was not a big deal. But for whatever reason, the guy decided to let both of them go for something like $120. I mean, it was ridiculously cheap. It cost me $150 to buy both.
I don't think that you could buy those on eBay for that much right now.
Yeah, and I mean, there was no way I was passing up the opportunity to buy them. And the G4 Cube in particular, I bought immediately because it was the only one I had ever seen that acrylic enclosure had no visible cracks or stress fractures or anything. It looks absolutely pristine.
That's awesome.
And still looks absolutely pristine.
I love that computer. I mean, I hate that it was underpowered, but because I love that computer.
So I actually have it sitting up on the mantle in the living room. Like it's a decorative piece at this point, because it's just not something that you typically encounter in such great shape.
No, definitely not. So just some real-time follow-up. You could pick up a G4 Cube, like looking at eBay. You can pick up a G4 Cube for like $120 on eBay.
Yeah, so I easily still have the ability to resell the two computers for a profit if I really wanted to.
Yeah, I'm oddly well aware of like Apple computers from the late 90s and early 2000s. I was working for this company. This was an interesting company. It's a local company in Birmingham. I think they were bought by I think they've been sold, but it was really weird because the business side of the company were all Mac, and the production side, the company had a production team for like plays and skits and performances, and they were all Windows computers. By the mid 2000s, the whole company had converted to Mac. But when I got there, the business side was Mac, and it was kind of odd. And my boss was like, "Yeah, we're backwards here." But the reason why the business side was all Mac is because the founder of the company's wife was like employee number 2, and she was a graphic designer, so she had a Mac, and so she was like sort of doing graphic design and managing a database. And since she was a graphic designer, she had a Mac, and they bought FileMaker, and so their database grew in FileMaker, and so the whole company had at least that part of the company had to be Mac based because of FileMaker. So,
I never really. I remember. I mean, I know FileMaker well from a just general perspective, but it's funny that I never actually encountered a place that I worked that used FileMaker.
FileMaker was so good. I think I remember working for this company, and I didn't have to do a lot with FileMaker, but later on, after I wasn't working for the company, there were several times that I made like some really simple databases, and that was my go-to because like somehow I had access to FileMaker for free. I think I even I was working in a lab, and I think I wrote someone at FileMaker and asked for a copy of it, and I got a copy. It was really weird. I don't know what it was, but I remember. Oh no, I know what it was. I just asked my boss to buy it for me. That's what it was. I got the free copies after I worked for Apple. I got a bunch of free versions of FileMaker while working for Apple. That's what I'm thinking about free. But I asked my boss to buy FileMaker, and I put all of our reagents in a database, and everybody in the lab loved me for it, and everybody in everybody else's lab was envious of it. Anyway, I thought FileMaker was great, and around the time that I started using FileMaker, I had to use what's Microsoft's database?
Access.
I had to make a database in Access for a school project, and it was abysmal compared to FileMaker.
Yeah, it's funny. Pretty much all of the shops that I've worked in have been Windows based up until the past decade or so, where Linux has been predominantly what I've worked with. But so everything I had to build had to be Windows native previously, and so Access was what I had to use.
Oh, but see, FileMaker was Windows native as well.
It was, but it was a separate purchase that I couldn't get any company to justify when they already had purchased Office. It's one of those things that you work in a Microsoft shop and you tend to have access to all the Microsoft tools, and then you have to justify why you would buy something outside of that.
That's fair.
I always remember it being a big win that when I was at a credit union however many years ago, and managed to convince them to go Active Directory but still managed to convince them not to do an Exchange server and to go with a Mac server running Kerio Mail Server, Kerio, as an alternative.
Oh, I remember that.
Yep. That was a big deal. The fact that I was able to justify that, and the only reason I was able to is because at the time it could natively handle push notifications to the first iPhone for mail delivery.
I thought Exchange had that feature as well, or was that iPhone OS 2?
No, Exchange did not. You had to run an agent on a Windows workstation for Outlook to be able to do so.
Okay. Man, I remember when like push was such a big, push email was such a big deal, and it's like, God, I wish these emails would stop pushing to me now.
Well, at this point, I really just wish email would kind of die and be replaced with some better technology. But I mean, at the same time, realistically, email is important enough for a lot of things that it just needs to be rethought. Most of it revolves around more complex abilities to say, look, just don't ever show me this kind of shit again.
Yeah.
The other question I had, I mentioned that I had a couple of questions for you. One was the Apple One question. The other, though, is I want to hear your initial thoughts on the iPhone 12.
So I got my iPhone 12 last Wednesday, and I did, for the first time, the phone-to-phone transfer. And it went flawlessly. It is the most easy process that I've gone through. I did the thing to, show the camera the thing, and I don't know how information is passed through that image, that moving image, but it looks cool. But I did the phone-to-phone transfer, and it was faster than restoring from an iCloud backup, and it has been the most seamless transfer of data I've ever had. And at this point, I think in the past week, I've only had to log into one application. Everything else was on there and ready to go. I did have this really weird issue, though. Right after I did it, Facebook Messenger messed up. Where somebody sent me a message in Facebook Messenger, I also got a notification from the Facebook app. So that was happening on my iPhone 12, and then I noticed that I didn't shut off my iPhone XS, and I noticed it was happening there. It was not previously happening there, but it was happening there as soon as that transfer was done. And the solution was really easy: delete Facebook, delete Messenger, reinstall them, and that solved the problem. But other than that, this was the easiest process I've had for getting my information from one phone to the other.
So I do find that interesting. I'm sure it had something to do with the delay between us receiving our phones, but for some reason I could not get the phone-to-phone transfer to work. It would just hang.
Oh.
I actually had to do the restore from the iCloud backup instead, and I actually had to cancel or force quit and force reboot the phone because it was stuck on the phone-to-phone transfer. But I also think I might have just been impatient because I have a bad habit of being impatient. And so it's entirely possible it would have worked if I had just given it time. But it set forever on, I think it was the activating screen. And I finally just got to the point where I was fed up with it. It's like, no, I know this shouldn't take this long. And I force quit everything and rebooted. And then I have had absolutely no problems after restoring from the iCloud backup.
I felt like there was not only did I feel like there was no part of that process that seemed like it took too long, I felt like it was like the fastest I'd ever transferred data over. I was really surprised by that process. My other thoughts on the phone were that I'm no longer excited about the Pacific Blue as I was before I got it. I don't think it's ugly or anything, and I like it, and I don't wish I had a different color. I'm just, not excited about it anymore.
I think that's funny because this is still the only phone that I've ever intentionally flipped over on the table so that I could see the back of it.
I I do love the frosted glass on the back. I think I find the frosted glass on the back more interesting than the actual blue color. I love the camera. The camera is excellent, and I feel like I wish I had to have more reasons to take actual pictures, not just ones where I'm playing around with the camera, but just like actual pictures, because the camera is so good.
I'm going to interject real quick there. One of the things that I've done over the past couple of months, I've started doing just a photo a day for the sake of making myself capture a photo a day. And that's been real interesting because after the first, week or so, the usual subjects don't apply because you feel like it's boring. And so it's forced me to be more creative on coming up with, well, what do I actually want to try to capture with a camera? Whether it's abstract or, something that's actually related to the day or what. But that helped immensely for me.
That's really cool. I might have to try that. Yeah, that's a really cool practice. I feel like the phone is thicker, even though it's not thicker. The flat edges make it feel thicker than the 10S. And right now I'm holding the 10S and the 12 Pro in my hand, and the 10S feels thinner than the 12 Pro because of the rounded edges. I like the flat edges. I think the bigger screen is nicer. I wouldn't say that I always notice it, but there are times where I'm like, oh, that's bigger, and I like that. And like, there's more of that. I feel like watching some videos in landscape, I've noticed that. So I like that a lot. I actually dropped the phone on Sunday, and it was in my Forerunner, like from the seat level. It hit the running board, and then it landed on the pavement outside. And I was like, oh shit, this is a moment where did I break the glass? Glad I got that AppleCare Plus. Not only did the glass not break, I can't even tell that I dropped it. There's no scratch. There's no scuff. There's no there's no little, there's nothing. Like, you can't tell that I dropped it. And I was really shocked by that.
That's good to know. I
don't want to know that, right? I didn't, in the moment, I was like, oh shoot. I'm thinking I do not want to know this information. But I was really surprised by that. I was just able to sort of wipe everything off, and it's like, oh, I didn't break anything.
It's funny. I mentioned to Emily, I'm really curious how well this new coating works. I want to go out to my driveway and just drop it and see what happens. But I also don't want to go out to the driveway and just drop it and see what happens. For science reasons, I would love to know. So if anybody wants to sponsor that particular activity, I would be happy to do so.
Oh, yeah.
But it's part of me just really wants to know, because they made a big deal about this ceramic shield technology. And I'm a bit too scared to go try it, even though that's why I have AppleCare in the first place. I don't want to deal with the headache of it right now. If we were not in a pandemic, I would probably be more inclined to go out and just, all right, let's see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I will say that that to me was one of the most surprising things. I'm pretty sure if that had happened to my 10S, there'd be like a small crack in the corner somewhere. It was really cool. In holding, I used an 11, not the 11 Pro, but I used an 11 for a while, which has the same size screen as the 12 Pro. I feel like I can remember how the 11 felt, because I remember feeling it. I went from a 10 to an 11 and then dipped back to a 10S, and I remember feeling like the 11 Pro, the 11 felt too big, definitely felt too big. And I think that the 12, between the 10S 11 Pro and the 11, the 12 Pro's kind of got everything going for it. got the bigger screen, but it's a little bit lighter and a little bit smaller than the 11, and I guess 10R.
Yeah, I've already gone on record a number of times about I absolutely prefer the flat sides, but I've noticed a large part of it also has to do with how I hold the phone normally, where the flat sides just feel better because it's more grippy. Because the way I hold the phone typically it's not like it sits down into the palm of my hand. It's more my fingertip squeezing against the sides.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that grip, the flat sides feel 1,000 times better. And I feel like I have a better grip on the phone, and I have yet to feel like that's a problem.
I've definitely felt like I've got a better grip on the phone. And when I dropped my phone Sunday, I wasn't holding it. I had knocked it off of the seat in my vehicle, so it wasn't like a slipping out of my hand thing. So I agree with you. Like, it feels grippier to me, the flat side. So
I do think it's interesting that we have different opinions on the blue, though, at this point. Like, I still really like the Pacific blue. Like, to me, it is the perfect subdued color. But then again, I've always been, aside from a couple of instances where I purchased the white phones, I've always been a black or the closest to black phone purchaser. And so this is kind of a big change from that. But I want it to still feel like it's not just outlandish and blaring and grabbing attention, you know?
Yeah. I mostly don't notice it anymore, and my kids notice it, and they're like, "Your phone is blue." But I was gonna say, at this point, like, if my phone was blue or if my phone was the black variant, then I'd be like, whatever. That makes it that when you say you've always tended toward, with the exception of a few white iPhones, you've tended towards the black. When the iPhone 7 came out, did you go matte black or jet black?
Matte.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard a lot of positive info about like the grippiness and tactile feel of the jet black, but the matte black was more my style.
I felt the same way, and just the other day, I was thinking, because I got a work phone at that time, and I went with the white iPhone 7, and I was just like, oh, I should have done like jet black. I should have had matte black for my personal and jet black for work. That would have been cool, but maybe jet black wasn't an option. Because when I did use that white iPhone as my daily, when I lost my 11, I did not like the white iPhone.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know that I would choose white again. I remember with the 4S, I think it was the 4S that I went white. I remember the main reason was reading about Jobs' obsession with white.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, you know what, that's probably the one that would be most like what he envisioned using anyway. Let's give it a shot. And I didn't mind it, but it just wasn't, and we've talked about it before, like seeing the white on the display really jarred you out of the experience of using the device.
Yeah. I feel like white was really good for the iPod. The first iPod I got was white because that was the only option that you had. And then I got the black one because I was like, ooh, cool. Because at that time, I was still like, I had a black computer. I was using an IBM ThinkPad. And so I went with a black one. And then after that, the computer I had after that ThinkPad was a 12-inch PowerBook. And, when I got the 12-inch PowerBook, I got really into the Apple white aesthetic, and I wanted a white iPod. And so I still like the Apple white aesthetic. Like, the AirPods are cool white. The cables, like the white cables, are great. I kind of when I got my MacBook Pro, I meant to have them order a silver one instead of space gray, because I feel like the silver was closer to that white aesthetic, and also fewer people have the silver, so I wanted to have the silver, but I made a mistake. But I don't like the white aesthetic on the phone.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair, because I do like the white. I like like the AirPods, earbuds, and any of the accessories. I like it being iconic, but I just don't like white on the phone. I did like the original iPod quite a bit. I have no complaints about it whatsoever. So I'm not so sure that I'm opposed to the white aesthetic. I just think that on the current, more full screen displays, white just doesn't look as natural for some reason to me.
I agree. And the first iPhone I had, the iPhone 3G, was white, and I didn't notice it because it was white on back only. The front was black, like all the other iPhones, and so I actually really liked having that iPhone being white. And I honestly really miss that form factor. You couldn't do it today with how big the displays have gotten, but I really love actually the iPhone 3GS was better than the iPhone 3G, but I really liked the way that felt in my hand. Even though I know people were upset about it being plastic, I loved it.
Yeah, so I went from the original iPhone to the 3GS, and I think the 3G is the only model I have not had, actually. There might be one other one in there somewhere. But I know what you mean. Like it definitely felt really good in the hand, and it was because the back was curved a little bit, so that it actually kind of fit in your hand better. Honestly, though, the 4S, the kind of revolutionized design post that is still my favorite.
Oh yeah,
even with the new 12 series being reminiscent of that. I do think the 4S felt better than the 12 Pro. Or 12. I assume the 12 feels the same way, but the 12 Pro is what I have to be able to compare to.
Yeah. Part of it I think is because it was just a smaller phone.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt that the reason I liked it so much was because it was more compact.
I'm really curious to see the 12 mini.
Part of me wants to buy one and have it as an option to go back and forth between, but I think that's just ridiculously excessive.
If I had an 11 Pro, I probably would have gotten a 12 mini. But I really wanted to have the three camera system, and maybe next year there will be a 12 mini Pro, and depending on how well the 12 mini does, and if there's a market for it. But that's something to. Sorry, a 13 mini Pro. That's something to look forward to. I was just gonna say that it's like I don't, as much as I like the way the iPhone 3G and 3GS felt in my hand, I don't want those phones. I just want to go back to 2008 and have, the 3GS is like the one to have, that's the only one or whatever. So,
yeah, I know what you mean. I couldn't consider the Mini at this point just because of my interest in the Apple Pro RAW format, but it's because I actually have a use case where that may very well be important. If it weren't for that, I think I could give up the advantages of the Pro and try the Mini.
Yeah.
So I know we've got a couple of topics we haven't gotten to. Honestly, though, the only one that I kind of want to mention, since we're closing in on time, have you watched the premiere of Season 2 of The Mandalorian yet?
Yes, sir, I did.
Oh, excellent. What'd you think?
I loved it. I thought it was a great season opener. It's exactly what I wanted, exactly what I expected. The only thing I found disappointing about it was that it was only one episode. I didn't realize they didn't drop all the episodes.
Yeah, so they did that with the first season as well.
By the time I got to the first season, all the episodes were out, and I was like, I went back and looked to see did they just change this? Because it's Disney Plus, it's a new series. I was like, this. My thought was like they probably did this with the first one. I just came late, but I wanted to know for sure, and so I watched it with my kids, and they loved it, and I thought the last bit at the end of that episode was excellent. I was not expecting that, and so my kids didn't quite realize who that was at the end of the episode. So I told them, they're like, "Whoa!" They got excited about it because they knew. The only thing that I didn't like about the episode is like I kept trying to figure out how is the crate dragon like moving around in the sand like it's water, because that's like solid sand.
It's funny because that's a ridiculously John observation at this point.
It's those little things, man. It's those little details that get me.
So it's funny, like to me, my immediate thought was, okay, this is just Tremors. And I'll just accept it on the same basis that I've seen this happen elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I eventually accepted it, but I, still think it.
Yeah, I mean, so realistically, the answer is that, I assume that the answer is that every species evolves to be able to move seamlessly in its environment. And if its environment is sand, then it has some mechanism for being able to move seamlessly in and around sand, right?
Yeah. I just don't know what that mechanism is. That's where I'm getting stuck. But I actually looked at like to the extent that I was looking up like crate monsters or crate dragon. I didn't quite realize how significant it was in Star Wars. Like it's like there's a lot that was written about the crate dragon. This is my first time seeing the crate dragon that I noticed. I think it's mentioned in that species of animal is mentioned in one of the canonical, even maybe one of the 4, 5, or 6, one of those episodes of one of those movies, Star Wars movies, but it's mentioned. So there's that. And there was even like information about the pearl. There's towards the end of the episode that one of the Tusken Raiders is like holding up a big beach ball kind of thing that he found inside the animal, and it's the crate dragon pearl. Are you familiar with this?
I am.
Okay.
So I was letting you go ahead and go, but the kind of the benefit that I've had of being immersed into some of the ancillary games and everything else is that the crate dragon in general has been something that I've accepted for a couple of decades now, because it's been in a lot of the ancillary stories and games and are referenced in multiple ways. So it was nice to see it finally being brought to the screen.
Yeah. From what I was reading, that was a particularly large crate dragon, like maybe like an abnormally large crate dragon.
Well, it's kind of difficult to compare because reading, sure, you get an idea of size, and I think this goes back to actually the beginning conversation about distance and how we relate to it. You're reading about this fictional universe where measurements are not directly translatable necessarily. And so you have this idea in your head of what it means, but we've never seen it on screen. So we have no correlation to what's normal, what's abnormal. It was the interpretation of what was portrayed is that this was abnormally large. But realistically, we have no true comparison for it to know for sure.
Like some of the images I saw, so I kind of based that idea, like, well, one is the context of the episode. The way that they speak about it was like it was an abnormally large dragon. But some of the images I saw of the pearl were much, much smaller than the one that was found in that particular dragon. So...
And that may be, I would assume some of those images came from like the visual dictionary or something else. And I've never actually looked at those. Like my exposure to the idea of the crate dragon was all written from like novels or things where they're describing things via text. There was no imagery. And so it may just very well be that my interpretation was always a little bit skewed anyway.
Yeah, but I liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought I had a great little teaser at the end. So I will. I won't watch the next episode Friday. I'll actually wait and watch it the next time my kids are over, so we can watch. We'll watch 2 episodes.
Makes sense. We will certainly watch it Friday, but I'll make sure that I keep that in mind with the show notes. We got through episode, not to just completely derail the subject, but we got through episode 7 of Ted Lasso earlier this evening as well. So we'll be wrapping it up probably by the end of the week, and we can kind of do follow up and discuss it probably next show. It might go one more show before we get to it.
Yeah, I feel like the next show is going to be an Apple show.
Yeah, I don't see any reason not to do so. I mean, it's fortuitous that it falls on the same day that we record.
Yeah. I gotta say, I guess this would be like last topic, and I saw the notes about YouTube TV. I laughed. It made me laugh.
I got so angry over the weekend. Go ahead with what you were going to say, and then I'll explain.
No, just that was it. I laughed.
Yeah, so I have tried so many different ways to have access to watching Liverpool play here in the States. I've tried a combination of Sling and Peacock Premium and Lord knows what else. I don't even know what all I've tried at this point. And over the weekend, I wanted to watch the match, and I did not get to, because every place I could find reference to it talked about NBC Sports Gold, which doesn't technically exist anymore as something you can purchase. And so finally I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to cancel everything I have, and then I'm going to look and see where can I view this game, and whoever has it, I'm going to go ahead and subscribe, and I'm not changing anything else. And lo and behold, pulled up YouTube TV. I could join the game. I said, screw it. Their interface is at least the best one out of all the jumbled piles of shit out there available. I'll just deal.
Yeah.
Because realistically, if I'm going to be frustrated by not being able to watch all of the matches, I would rather be the least frustrated. And so that experience is YouTube TV, because it at least seems to cater to the user experience being usable and enjoyable, as opposed to everything else on the market. Well, all right, slight digression. I do find Apple TV, Disney Plus usable, no issues. I am specifically talking about to navigate what would traditionally be cable or live TV.
Yeah. We should actually have like a discussion of interfaces on these. I've wanted to discuss on a different another night, but I've wanted to discuss the interfaces of the various subscriptions.
Yeah, at this point, I've pretty much tried them all, and I have no problems with that. We'll schedule that for not next week, but the week after.
Yeah, I've probably tried most, if not all. So
yeah, I mean, it annoys me that I'm paying for YouTube TV because of their price hike, but it annoys me less than dealing with the frustrations of everything else. So, unfortunately, it means I don't get to watch every Liverpool game, but apparently there is no fucking scenario out there with NBC where I can watch every Liverpool game without subscribing to cable and something else and Peacock Premium.
Ugh.
And at that point, it's not worth it. I'm paying more than I'm paying for YouTube TV.
Yeah. At least YouTube TV was like a lot more consistent.
Well, and on top of that, at least with YouTube TV, I do get to be able to watch the Cincinnati Bearcats play, and like I get the ancillary things that I don't care as much about, but I do enjoy watching. And I get the ability to just set a team, and I know it's going to prompt me or record everything for that team, which is the one feature that is ridiculously nice that I wish other people would do.
That was such a good... I mean, they've got it right there. That was one of the features that I thought they had really, really well done. And I was going to say, like, I remember thinking, like, oh, I'm going to record these shows. Like, I'm going to record and watch them and not have to wait for them to be on a streaming service. And I never did that. The only show that I ended up watching as it was coming out was American Horror Story. And there's not going to be one of those this year. So
Yeah, it's funny, for as much as I have attempted to circumvent dealing with cable, it has pretty much exclusively been for sports. And I'm not a huge sports person. But that's, for some reason or another, that's where I have my stumbling block. Like I could very well not subscribe to anything else and be fine.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's because sports is meant to be watched live. Like I've even like taken to watching some from time to time. I'll watch the daily news on YouTube because NBC and ABC throw the daily news, like their evening report, on YouTube. It's commercial free, and it's just, later that day. Like, it doesn't feel like, I feel like even though it's a few hours later and I watch the news, I don't feel like I've missed something. Whereas if you try to watch a recording of sports, I feel like I'm not there with everybody else. I feel like I've missed something. Whereas like recording of sports is because you want to watch the same match again. Whereas, or the match wasn't quite, like if it's like some other team that you're just mildly interested in, like I'll watch and see a good game because I want to watch football, not my team. I'm okay watching a recording of the match, but like when Arsenal plays, I want to watch live. There's something about watching the sports match live that's different than a recording.
Well, and part of it is just the suspense of not knowing the outcome, right? I mean,
you can kind of like even like if I don't have any spoilers, even if I know, like if there's a 6 a.m. match, I want to be up at 6 a.m. and watch it. I don't want to like tune in at 8 o'clock and watch it, even if I had could be guaranteed no spoilers. I still, even if I'm guaranteed no spoilers, I still feel like I'm missing something. I'm missing out on the process.
I get it. I mean, I do the same thing when I'm able to watch a Liverpool match. I will get up early or tune in whenever it's playing. Whereas a lot of times and I'll call out Cincinnati again just because that's really the only other thing that I pay attention to. Whereas their games, if I miss one, it's all right, whatever. I'll just see what the final was or catch highlights. It's very different for some reason for me with the Premier League than it is anything else. But I also have a very limited comparison of what that anything else is.
Bottom line, sports has to be watched live. And that's why you have YouTube TV.
Yes.
I'm still protesting.
And I'm still angry because I still can't watch every match.
Yeah, I'm still protesting YouTube TV right now for their price hike.
To be honest, I'm probably going to cancel it before too long because I'm going to end up with 2 or 3 weekends in a row where I'm not going to be able to watch a match, and I'm just going to say, screw it all, I'll just watch highlights. Like, I know that that's inevitable. I'm just trying to postpone it at this point.
Yeah.
We'll see how long that lasts.
You know what? There's just like one more topic that's listed here, and it's election, and there's not really a lot to talk about at the moment, except for right now showing Joe Biden has 223 electoral college votes and Trump with 145.
Where are you catching that? Because I saw different numbers a moment ago. They were in line. Like I'm not saying that they were drastically different. Okay.
It's just Google. Google's what they put up there. So, and that's based on the AP.
Okay, so right now CNN is showing 205 for Biden and 136 for Trump.
Yeah, so looking at this 223 and 145, I'm like, how are you? Yeah, I don't feel like these numbers are gonna stay this way. There's a whole bunch of absentee ballots that need to be counted, or early voter ballots that need to be counted. I'm not expecting like a proper or definitive declaration of the winner until maybe a few days from now.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm just hoping that there's not a decision to concede prior.
I don't think Joe's gonna. I don't think he's gonna concede. Like if you think back, so 20 years ago was my first vote ever, and that was the infamous hanging Chad, dangling Chad Bush Gore election. And looking back, I think Gore conceded a little bit too early, considering the circumstances. But it was kind of like a gentlemanly statesman move to concede based on the numbers that they had. And because this is Donald Trump, and because the past 4 years have been the past 4 years, and 2020 has been a fucking 2020, I don't think Biden will concede so soon or so easily as Gore did. I don't think there will be a repeat of that.
I certainly hope not. My biggest concern is that it happens sometime tomorrow, and happens too early. Like I don't know. At this point, anything goes. Obviously, this is an election unlike any other that we have seen, so it's difficult to kind of figure out what you think might happen and how things look and everything else. Like realistically, looking at preliminary numbers, even though we're talking about Biden being up on the electoral vote, like the numbers and the trends and everything else don't look good. But I don't think it's accurate, because I think that the vast majority of absentee, mail-in ballots, everything else are not going to go the same direction as Election Day results.
No. I think you're going to see... I think Republicans vote... The majority of voters today were Republican voters, and I think the majority of mail-in absentee ballots were Democratic votes. And it's going to take a little bit to count 100 million ballots.
Yeah, I agree that that's my thought process. I think that the biggest thing is that because of the last election, part of me doesn't want to go to sleep. I don't want to turn around and wake up in the morning and everything's red and I'm like trying to figure out how to get to Canada.
Right. Yeah, the Mounties are they're waiting to like shoot us down.
Yeah. I mean, I make joke of it, but this is the first election that we have legitimately had a conversation about, okay, if this election goes this way, are we prepared to leave everything behind and move? And to me, that is very significant, because that has never been an option prior to now. Like I have no problems packing up and moving. Like it is not me that is halting that or saying that that's not a viable option. If it were on me, hell, I wouldn't be here now. But the fact that it is actually a legitimate conversation that we had over this past weekend, like that tells you everything.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like it's not even just the legitimacy of the conversation that we had. While Emily was talking to her parents, like they even mentioned the same thing, and they are by no means the type of people to just pack up and move. Yeah.
It's honestly, I think there would be a number of countries that would accept Americans that are like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is not where I want to be. And I think there would be a number of countries that would be accepting of us.
Yeah, the main reason Canada, of course, comes to mind is because from a work perspective, I feel like I could probably make that happen easily since we have a presence in Canada. I didn't realize we have presences in an awful lot of places, so it does make me wonder if I could easily make a move either way. But I noticed that we do have an Edinburgh office and a Glasgow office. And both of those would be higher on my list than Canada because I would be closer to my preferred drinks of choice.
Yeah. So,
I've considered exploring those options regardless, just from that perspective. But in all honesty, I don't want to start over any more than anybody else does. Like, I really just hope the election turns out the way that I hope it turns out, and we start on a proper positive trajectory and see where it goes from there.
I agree. And at this point, like 4 years ago, I wanted to move. Like like before Trump was elected, I was talking about like, if he's elected, I want to move. I want to move to New Zealand, and I actually feel less strongly about that now, this time around. But it's, my life circumstances are a bit different, and that's why. So, I think did a quick refresh, and I saw that Biden has made a national address. I don't think it's a concession speech by any means, but he had a short address about 15 minutes ago, and I'm curious to see what that was.
Yeah, CNN is currently portraying it as though it's live. They don't have subtitles, so I don't know what he's saying, since I was at least a good host and not having the TV play in the background while we record.
Well, it's not a sporting event, so I can pretend that it's live. I'm okay with that, even if it's 15 minutes later.
Yeah. Well, I will say they just changed the headline to Biden saying, "We believe we're on track to win this election." So there's definitely no fear of any type of concession style statement.
No, that would be ridiculous when there are 100 million ballots that are going to be counted.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't figure it would be. It's nice to have the affirmation that there's, yeah.
The assurance, yes. The assurance is nice for sure. All right. That's a full...
Well, I think that calls it a show.
Yeah. And the parlance of CJ Craig, that's a full lid.
Yeah. We might have to start using more West Wing quotes.
Yeah. They're only good.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good evening.
You as well. I'll probably be up for a little bit, so if you get a random text, that's why.
Yeah, I'm going to be up because I'm going to go watch this thing and see what he said.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
As always, you can reach us on Twitter at untitled_hosts with an S. We also have an Instagram account with the same name at untitled_hosts. You can send us an email at untitled.hosts@gmail.com. And you can visit the feed directly at theuntitledpodcast.com. Have a good night.